Hello, I am Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be talking about the Pad Special Event Tournament and the strategies involved for securing a crown. So this ranking dungeon has a generous 7% crown threshold and a 20% rainbow event medal. However, this event will also heavily weight certain awakenings for the style or matching bonuses, which will greatly dictate the types of teams players will be using. So this is a non-fixed team dungeon, so you can customize it based on your individual monster box. And this does make it somewhat quite interesting because, well, you have to try and pursue a certain matching or playstyle that doesn't necessarily have too heavy team building requirements, so to speak. So in Japan, the crown cutoff was 138,000 and the rainbow event medal was 116. So as with all ranking dungeons, they all follow this similar pattern of score distribution or breakdown. So each average combo is worth 5,000 points. Each second remaining is 500. Hitting 40 million damage is 10,000 points, and then it scales down accordingly. If you use an active to kill a single floor with no combos being made, so that means like a button, not a poison or something along those lines, is a negative 5,000 point penalty, which is not applicable for this dungeon, generally speaking. And then there's matching bonuses. So these are the default matching bonuses. So whenever you make a TPA, you get a dinky 50 points and so on and so forth. However, for this ranking dungeon, as well as other ranking dungeons, there are certain emphasis placed on various awakenings. So in this one here, light rose are 10 times more valuable. So now they're worth 2,000 points. TPAs are 750 points. Guard break, so all 5 colors, equals 800 points. And then using a 7x6 board is negative 20,000 points. So obviously the 7x6 board is quite a sizable penalty, and it's further compounded by the fact that light rows, or just row making in general, does not gain any extra benefit from a 7x6. On a 7x6 board, you only can make 3 light rows naturally, so you're not gaining anything more. If you gained more, maybe you could possibly justify it, but in all honesty, you really couldn't anyway. So ignore 7x6 because it's going to hurt your score overall. So the priority should be light rows, because light rows are worth 2,000 points. If we math it out, you can get 3 light rows every single board in theory, which will yield 6,000 points per floor. There's 8 floors, so in theory you can technically get 6 times 8, 48,000 bonus points, which is quite outrageous. You can still pursue TPA, but it's just going to be less efficient overall. When you think about it, if you make a row of light and then a row of, say, dark or whatever on top, that'll be 2,200 points. But when you're making TPAs, you're just not going to be as efficient overall, and in all honesty, you're getting less points as well anyways. So rows are the way to go. Now, you still want to have TPA available, because when you have a board that's not perfectly distributed, you can just kind of readjust your orbs accordingly and get some extra TPA points in there. And having guard break available is just in the off chance you actually hit all 5 colors and you get a bonus 800 points. Why not just have that available if it is at least possible? So the dungeon breakdown. So this is an 8-floor dungeon, which means there is the possibility that some actives used at the beginning of the dungeon may be available once again at the end. Furthermore, floor 3 also gives us a tri-elemental board, which means we don't actually need to use an active skill there. So when you think about it, we have 6 cards for 6 floors, but if we're able to use one again on the boss, basically we could have 7 floors worth of active skills, which is the 7 we actually need to cover. So in theory, we can have an active skill every single turn, which will greatly maximize our point potential. So if you do wish to see the full dungeon breakdown, not in English, you can click here, but I just kind of briefly summarized it here. Like, I'm going to assume everything is going to die anyways when matching, so I didn't include the health values or the spawn names or whatnot, but the general idea is there are some key mechanics to watch out for. So on floor 1, it's going to produce locked skyfalls, so light orbs are just going to be present more often, so they're going to be more abundant when using your board changers. It'll preemptively change the board to all 5 colors plus hearts, so you don't get any extra. You have to move very quickly once the board has been basically generated. And then it randomly binds 1 card, which can be problematic. Floor 2 spawns 3 poison orbs. If we use a bicolor board changer, it doesn't matter. Floor 3 has resolve and generates wood, light, oh gosh, it should be wood, light, heart board. I don't know why it says wood twice, but it's a tri-elemental board, including light, and then a small preemptive. So 100% health teams can't function necessarily here. There's floor 4 has a skill bind, so make sure you have skill bind resist. Floor 5 has an 8 combo shield. So you either make rows and pray for skyfalls, or you just regular combo it out. Floor 6 has a 6 combo shield. You can still make rows. You should be able to hit 6 combos there. And it also locks fire and wood orbs. Floor 7 locks all orbs. Floor 8 has a resolve, changes the top to dark, bottom to hearts, has a 7,740 preemptive, and then 26 million health. So this is probably where you're going to try and damage cap because it's close to that 40 million anyway, so why not help ensure you actually sweep that floor? So again, there are two preemptives, so using 100% health teams like Zeus Verse is just not going to be favorable. So what are the teams to use for this ranking dungeon? So this dungeon has 2 resolves, but we want to score points through light rows. So making a follow-up attack in a row cannot happen. So the best solution for this is using Light Vag. And Light Vag deals modestly high damage when matching light combos, which we are going to be doing anyways. And then he also has follow-up attack after matching, which is important because you match your orbs, bring them down to 1 health from resolve, Light Vag pings them off, kills, you don't have to worry about the resolve whatsoever. And then he's ideally paired with Yogg because Yogg has an explosively high multiplier with 2 light combos, which is actually what we need to activate anyways. So this is kind of like the more ideal leaders to use. Light Vag is much harder to replace or replicate, but Yogg can be other match 5 leaders. It could be Xiumin, that sort of idea. But remember, you only need to own one of these cards because you pair with a friend, which is the card you don't have. In terms of subs, like basically all ranking dungeons, high skill boost cards tends to be the ones that are favored. But because TPAs and Guard Break are now boosted as well, you are somewhat preferring to use cards with TPA available if possible and Guard Break and the full rainbow coverage if that's at least practically available. So those should be secondary things to chase. Light rows are still more important. If you just bring a team of light rows and lots of skill boosts and lots of board changers, that's going to be enough anyways, but at least keep this in mind. If you're able to min-max your team, have the TPAs, have the Guard Break available. Now, as I already mentioned beforehand, because of the 8th floor dungeon, you are able to actually use some active skills that will charge up in time for the boss. So because the boss generates a row of dark and a row of heart orbs, using ideally something like Apollo, which changes hearts and dark orbs to light, will give you the maximum light damage boosting potential. But even something like Valkyrie or Elia, which are both farmable options that changes at just one of those orbs to light orbs, can still be meaningful. And all of those have a short enough cooldown to be able to have them back up for the boss. If using Apollo, you will need to actually have 1 turn of haste because he has an 8-turn cooldown. In terms of inherits, basically you're going to be using bicolor board changers for the most part, but depending on if you're using Apollo, you will need a turn of haste, but there are 2 floors that lock the boards, or lock orbs at least, so you want to have 2 orb unlockers if possible. So basically bicolor board changers with no animation for not those floors, and then orb unlocking and haste if necessary for the floors 6 and 7. So putting this all together, so this is kind of a sample theory crafted team here. I believe this type of team scores very high in Japan. I don't see why it wouldn't score high here. But basically the idea is we use Yogg paired with Light Vag. We have the Apollo, and ideally in this form so you get the wood TPA, which is nice. And then Avalon Drake has a light row card inherited because there's actually no light rows in the team, and you actually don't get points unless you actually have a light row awakening there. Or Farian is skill boost with a bicolor board. Horus is also skill boost with a bicolor board, but he also has Guard Break as their super awakening. And then the team also has Yusuke, which gives you the board unlock, the bicolor board changer, and the single turn of haste to get Apollo back up. Sylvie is basically the same thing as a similar idea. It has the board unlock and the bicolor board changer. There are alternatives, of course, but this is just something that I kind of think that might be a little more accessible possibly for most players. So that's basically the general idea. And in theory, Apollo has bind immunity as a weapon assist inherit. Very luxurious, but it does guarantee higher consistency when playing through the dungeon. So just make sure you actually have light rows on your team, but unfortunately for myself, I can't actually build this team because I am missing Light Vag and Yogg. So what I'm going to be doing is using Xiumin, who was a ranking dungeon reward from before because she has similar scaling leader skill, and then basically almost the exact same team. I don't have the lower form of Apollo. He is reincarnated, so I'm going to be having using this. I'm going to inherit Weld on my Avalon Drake in order to have the TPA. So I have TPAs in all colors. I have the Guard Breaking for Horus. Similar idea. I have the Yusuke for the board unlock haste. and then Sylvie for just the board unlock and bicolor, and then just bicolor my way through the rest of the dungeon. I'm going to be throwing a physical killer onto my Apollo in order to give myself a little bit more oomph, because Suman does deal less damage compared to Yogg, but it may not even be necessary. And in all honesty, there's nothing else I could put on there because I don't have a bind immune weapon assist. So, in conclusion, this ranking dungeon looks quite exciting. I do like the idea of playing with Rose. I think it can be fun to a certain extent. It does force you to kind of think in different ways, and just abusing bicolors of Rose can be enjoyable as well, maybe. But regardless of all that, let me know what you think about this ranking dungeon in the comments below, as well as the type of team you plan on using and how well it actually scored for you as well. So, hopefully you all have a fantastic day. I wish you all the best luck in your own pad adventures, and happy puzzling.